What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. There are plenty of obscure areas of interest in the Pokemon world with secret connections, or at least outlandish Pokédex entries. However, one segment that remains as overlooked as ever is the idea of Pokemon Body Shapes. As far as I can tell, I was the first person to ever make a video about the topic years ago, but it's remained just as unnoticed since then. Not even being accessible in the recent games, only being a side feature in Pokemon Home, which makes it all the more difficult to determine which of the 14 body types any of the Pokemon might fall into. Real quick, these shapes are just a head with a base, head with legs, head with arms, serpentine form, Pokemon with fins, quadrupedal, insectoid, tentacles or multi-legged, Pokemon with wings, one with multiple sets of wings, bipedal, bipedal with a tail, and finally Pokemon made of multiple bodies. But only being able to access these body types in Pokemon Home has muddied the waters a bit, because at least with most of the Teal Mask editions, the mobile Pokemon Home version gave different shapes than the Switch version, where sometimes the mobile version is better, like classifying the Poltergeist line as a head with arms when the console removes them for some reason, although I guess maybe that's just to match the misplacement of their Galar counterparts. But then the phone tries to claim that Okidogi is a head with a base? It's clearly got massive buff arms. Perhaps that shape could have worked for Monkey Dory, but no, the phone decided that bipedal with a tail was better, despite not having a tail at all. But sadly, these were the only changes of body shapes in this generation. They didn't go back to fix any of the vastly out-of-place selections. They have done that before, like removing Cresselia from the Insectoid class, but you're really just gonna leave Gumshoes in the quadrupedal category instead of bipedal with a tail when he's basically a dead ringer for the silhouette? Or you're gonna stick with Eternatus being in the single wing group and somehow not the Serpentine one, even though that's what the Eternamax form is classified under? However, we have newer problems to deal with, in this very category in fact, with Fluttermane. If you look back at the original Misdreavus, it's in the solo head group, which can make sense, I guess. You could argue that Miss Magia shouldn't be there and could go into another group, but how can adding some ribbons change it so much? This Paradox Pokemon is a ghostly fairy. I'm pretty sure wings are like the fourth most important thing keeping it airborne at that point. Also, would these things even count as wings? Does Sylveon have wings now? And furthermore, if they do count as wings, it has 4 of them, so if anything, it should have been in the multi-winged category. If I had my way, there would be a brand new sort of amorphous blob body shape that many of these Pokemon would fall into, like the new legendary Wo-Chien probably should be instead of Serpentine, but that is where other snails are located, so I guess that's fine. But while we're looking into Paldean legends, there is a huge discrepancy between Koraidon and Miraidon. The Scarlet mascot is perfectly fine being in the bipedal tail category, which you would expect. However, the Violet mascot, who looks almost identical, is somehow considered a quadruped? How does that even make sense? Its body structure is a duplicate of Koraidon, except for the jet engines that it has instead of legs, so you might say that disqualifies it from being bipedal, but if that's the case, then that would certainly disqualify it from having 4 legs as well. Is there any reason that it shouldn't be the Serpentine body shape? I can't think of one, especially when its Paradox name is Iron Serpent. I can only assume that this was overlooked, because it truly has no reason to be in this category. This is far more egregious than Terapagos going from this class to just a head in its form change. I mean, how does this not count for anything other than its head? Not to mention its overly ornate form, still considering none of that worthwhile besides its cranium. But unless they're somehow counting Miraidon's ride form but not Koraidon's for some reason, the mascot mess up is much worse. Also, people kinda made fun of me last time for saying Zeraora should be in the tail category when it's got more of a ponytail thing going on coming from near its head, but the Paradox Pokemon Screen Tail does seem to count for that despite its abnormal placement. Maybe they just felt obligated based on its name, but I stand by what I said about it. However, let's move to the multiple body category. I'm not too shaken by what's been placed here. Hydrapple and Tandemaus make perfect sense, but I'm more interested in what they didn't include. If you look back, you will predictably see Dugtrio in this group. However, for some reason, the quote-unquote new Wugtrio didn't make the cut. Honestly, the previous stage, Wiglet, is fine for the head and base crowd since we're not fully sure what's underneath there, but its evolution Wugtrio clearly has 3 different heads. Unless you're telling me that they're actually just limbs off of the same creature, and surely this random rock isn't an actual part of its body, at least not any more than the apple would count for Diplin as a base, but it still gets to be a part of the multi-body category, so they clearly haven't forgotten about this body style or what it means, so it truly baffles me to banish Wugtrio to an unfitting body shape. But I guess maybe that was intentional to further convince people that it wasn't just a Dugtrio ripoff. But that's far from the only oddity in Scarlet and Violet, not to say that they're all off. I mean, even if its fins are made of fire, Chi-Yu doesn't really have anywhere else to go. But when you look at Gimmighoul, literally none of it makes sense. Its evolution is fine in the bipedal category, but then Gimmighoul is in the same spot despite seemingly having a tail. You might say, nah, that's a coin holder, not a tail, but Pokemon have been put in the tail category for a lot less, so I don't really get what the criteria is. But you can't even really use that one in battle anyway, you have to use the chest form. However, the body shape for that one is somehow classified as a head with a base. How does that make sense when we can not only still see the arms that it has, but we also know that it's got the rest of its body in there, it's just covered up by coins? That'd be like pulling Hippowdon from the 4-legged group because it sometimes gets covered by sand. Totally ridiculous. But Gen 9 is not the lone outlier in body type issues, just the newest one, which gave us a lot to talk about. However, looking at older games will show us the likes of the Ultra Beasts that are giant question marks in this regard. Nihilego makes sense to be part of the Tentacle group, but why is Buzzwole right next to it? I guess technically it has 4 legs, so it couldn't count as bipedal, but if you're that much of a stickler, then it could count as a quadruped, right? I mean, if the riding versions of Calyrex count, then surely arms aren't a disqualifier. Or Buzzwole could have been given to the insectoid group since it's obviously based on a bug, and it would fit much better than Lotad, who is still in this group because of its random extra legs. Then you go to the Ultra games and see Stakataka, who is in the quadruped class, and I guess that could fit as just a box with 4 legs, but it's outright stated that its entire body is made up of individually living blocks. So how in the world does that not count as being made up of multiple bodies? Supposedly the number is 150, which is far more than any of the other Pokemon in this group, except for maybe Wishiwashi, I guess, so maybe that's just an overload for the category, but I would argue that Stakataka is more deserving than any of the others out there, to bring justice to all of the little lifeforms that make up this hive mind barricade. Also, going back to basically the very beginning, I just kind of overlooked Charizard. I mean, its previous stages are in the bipedal tail category, which makes total sense, so I guess they just wanted to keep the whole family together, but then you realize, wait a minute, aren't there 2 whole categories devoted to having wings? And there are, so why did Charizard not make the cut for the upgrade? Not even the Megaforms counted when their wings are even more enhanced. Now, it's true the wings are not in place of its hands like most of the winged group, but neither are Flygon's, and that didn't seem to stop him from being here. So we really just need to stop stigmatizing arms in the wing category, since both appendages can coexist. Although sometimes there's the opposite problem, like with Dracloak, whose tiny arms are apparently so pronounced that they put it in the head with arms body style, somehow shifting it away out of the Serpentine class that Dreepy is in. So there's just a shocking lack of consistency throughout. Just like how other bugs are labeled insectoid bodies when they also have wings, but don't seem to make the cut for some reason or another. Another one that has me scratching my head is Musharna. This puffy dream cloud could be another good candidate for the amorphous body type that I brought up earlier, but instead it's under the bipedal banner. As you can see, that's crazy because its spine, if it even has one, seems incapable of being upright. Even if it uncurled from the fetal position, it would still only be able to stand on its 4 legs, which makes it even worse because Munna is a member of the quadruped group. So when it becomes even more compact, it somehow counts as standing up? Not sure that checks in any universe, but also nobody really gets worked up about these Pokemon anyway. But lastly, I do want to head back to the Paldea region one more time for the new Varoom line, but more specifically, Revavroom. This motorized monster may be the go-to transport for Team Star, but for some reason its body shape is hugely out of whack by being in the head with legs group. Now, Varoom is also in this class too, which, fair enough, I don't know where else to put it because it's so strangely constructed, but its evolution, as you may have noticed, has 4 different wheels. It's a whole car in there, not just a moped. I don't see how they could make the 4 wheels not count as being a quadruped. Is it just because they're wheels? Because that seems like an arbitrary rule and more like you're just unfamiliar in dealing with wheels, but that's not fair to punish the Starmobiles just because you're out of your element. Honestly, I would rather see Revavroom in the tentacle group than say that its wheels don't matter at all and only consider the chassis as part of its body. But then again, this is the same group that housed Carkol already, so I guess we're only counting axles as feet? This is only slightly more perplexing than having Dupiter in this same group, despite clearly having more than 2 legs. But then again, maybe this is all random nonsense like the Pokédex entries made up by children on the fly. So, if you're still unfamiliar with Pokémon Body Shapes, go ahead and look into it just to see how out of place some of these assignments are. Which body shapes do you find the most illogical? Let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.